All right. Good morning, everybody. We are going to go ahead and begin. For our meeting today, for our learning intention, we're going to discuss the implementation timeline for the new EPP standards and educator competencies. And then for the success criteria, we would like the participants to provide feedback on the new EPP standards and the new educator competencies. On the agenda today, from 9 to 9:20, we'll talk about the APPEL Leadership Conference this fall, and then some data request and personnel changes at USBE. And then from 9:20 to 9:30, Malia is going to discuss some legislative and agency updates that were also recently shared at the UPERA conference. And then from 9:30 to 9:40, we're going to talk about the new HB 208. And then from 9:40 to 10:15, we're going to share a draft timeline for implementing the new EPP standards and the new competencies. And that is where we would love to get some feedback from all of you. So we have established our location for the APPEL Leadership Conference. And this year is going to be held in Canyon School District. We have 3 potential dates, and the conference will just be one day. So I know the Tuesday and Wednesday are next to each other on the calendar, but it would just be the Tuesday or the Wednesday. So those dates are Monday, September 30th, Tuesday, October 29th, or Wednesday, October 30th. And if you guys wouldn't mind filling out that survey, it'll also ask for things you might like to see discussed at the conference. And I'm going to put a link to the survey in the chat so you can access it. And I'm also putting PowerPoint in the chat. Thanks for asking, Amy. So if you don't mind filling that out, that would help us narrow down which of those 3 days works best for all of you for us to host the conference. So thanks for doing that. I think Lisa is going to discuss this next one.
Yes, so we have some personnel changes. We have Lori Anderson, who's been our early literacy licensing specialist, is moving on to better things. She is going to be working, I think eventually she's going to be working as an adjunct professor in the fall, but she's excited to have some time off to spend with her kids. So we're excited to wish her the best of luck in her new endeavors. And if we haven't hired her replacement yet, but until we do, we just ask that you direct all of your literacy related questions to myself. And when we get her replacement hired, we will let you know who that is. And then we did have a request from our data team. They've been getting a lot of data requests, and they're happy to fulfill most of those. But they have been getting requests for things that they don't have information on, or it would take a really, really long time to find. And so they'd ask for your help in this. Just as a reminder, we're welcome to request like lists of individuals that are employed in LEA that have an LEA specific license or associate license area or endorsement, and the license expiration date. That's something that can be easily pulled. If you need more information about those individuals, like their prior work experience or previous licenses, then you will need to provide the Cactus ID for those, because it's not all found in the same spot, and it's really hard to find unless we have a Cactus ID. So that's what they ask, that you provide that if you need that information, and then send those data requests to tldata@schools.utah.gov. We also have some Canvas help resources on our website. There are reports in Canvas that can be helpful if you have access to that. And if for some reason those reports aren't working or you can't get them to work, feel free to reach out to our data team for support in that. Just a reminder that we do not have information on when individuals enrolled in your APPEL program or how long they've been in the program. So license status is not synonymous with program enrollment. So people could have an associate license and be enrolled in a university program, for example. And they could just apply for an associate license and not be enrolled in any program. So just because they have an associate license doesn't mean they've been enrolled in an Apple program somewhere. And that we don't have any information on program enrollment except for what you provide during your annual report. So we only get that information once a year. So that's something we expect you guys to be keeping track of, and that's why we ask it of you once a year, is because it's not something that we have available in our database. So, any questions on that?
Lisa, it looks like in the chat, Alana asked if, is there a way to request that an LEA specific be expired?
If that's an interesting question. If they
Want me
move
to
your,
take it?
yes, please.
Okay. So we can, LEA specific licenses are automatically expired when somebody leaves employment with the LEA. Beyond that, a license is a property right of the educator. So unless they're no longer employed at your LEA, we cannot expire the license.
It looks like Shonda says the automatically isn't happening all the time.
We run the automatically, it's a manual process that happens, it doesn't happen automatically. So we have to figure out who has an LEA specific and then doesn't have employment, and then we expire those licenses. So it's manual, but we do that, and we especially do that before funding ends, before the end of the fiscal year. So we run it several times a year. So you don't have to make the request. All you have to do is terminate the educator in Cactus, and then we will attend to the LEA specific expiring.
Good questions. Is there any others about data requests or licenses? Oh, she says if we find one that slips through the cracks, how do we resolve it?
Yeah, if the other thing to remember is that an LEA specific license, if it's issued for Canyon School District, it will not qualify that person to do anything in any other district or charter. But if you find one that maybe has been longer than 6 months or a year, certainly you can email our office. You can email licensing@schools.utah.gov and we'll take care of it.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Malia.
Oh, it's me. Yay, it's my turn. So it has been a very busy couple of months in everything in public ed. We had a record number of bills passed this legislative session, 166 bills specific to education, which is the most by far. I think it's the most by like 20%. So it was a big year. But the first news is the good news, which is the professional licensure grant was finally awarded yesterday. There was a delay because the legislature rescinded about $200,000 from our current budget, and so we had to make sure we had funds to cover it. Budgets are due by the 15th of April, and then it's going to be a reimbursement. So you would have to submit documentation for any expenses you wanted to reimburse to educators. Those allowable expenses period is this fiscal year. So starting July 1 of 23, going through June 30th of this year. And I can't remember exactly when those reimbursement requests have to be in. It's sometime early July in order to be reimbursed. So if you were the grant contact, you should have gotten the email yesterday from me, and your business administrators got the notification through Utah Grants yesterday. And I have already seen one LEA submit their budget proposal. So we are just those are working through. Any questions on the grant? Yeah, Lisa said July 1st. For some reason, I think it's July 7th. I think they give us a week because the fiscal year technically goes through July 7th, but I can check that and put it in the chat. So we have had some rule changes related to licensing. Some of them are not yet approved. That's this first one. The board has has discussed most of these items in committee already, but due to the passing of HB 208, then we have to attend to some other things. So these are things that are coming, hopefully, and will be approved and enroll in mid-June sometime. Things that are relevant for this group are perhaps the associate license renewal will be eliminated, but there will be a 2-year extension available. So that will give candidates at least 2 years employed under the AEL. And it also gives a lot more flexibility for special education. And so, so that's exciting. The AEL, if somebody has not yet then have a bachelor's degree, then the AEL is only going to be allowed when they enter their student teaching experience. This is to prevent some of those maybe college freshmen or sophomores who maybe haven't even taken an education class to qualify for an associate license. And then there's a couple things related to the LEA specific. So the LEA extension, it doesn't have to be, it won't be initiated by the LEA, but someone in the HR department or their designee will have to sign the extension form. But again, this hasn't gone into effect yet. This still has to be debated by the board and is subject to whatever they decide. And Alana, I'll tap your, or Amy, I'll write an answer to your question after we're done with these rules. So, and then we're gonna have to deal with 208, which we're gonna get to in a minute. So we're gonna just push forward. 302 is related to educator renewals. Anyone who has had an assignment for 5 years does not have to complete the renewal paperwork. So the form that they have to have signed by admin, they don't have to do that. There's going to be some other things that we're going to have to tweak with, but that goes into effect mid-April, but due to our renewal cycle, you won't see any updates in USIMS until after July 1. So that is that. We talked about 303 last APPEL directors meeting, and this is the one that has the teacher preparation competencies and the elementary education content competencies. And then in 305, this is related to people who have school leadership licenses in other states when they're coming into Utah. It just allows for greater flexibility for us to more easily grant the professional level school leadership license area. And international guest teachers will be granted a professional license for 5 years. That includes the DLI endorsement. So international guest teachers would be granted a professional license with professional secondary, professional world language, and professional DLI. Okay, and I think, let me make my thing bigger. Yep, okay. The legislative session was perhaps the most crazy we've ever seen. There is a link here to implementation guides that will explain a lot of the different rules that are, or bills that are related to education. It doesn't have all of the ones that are related to education. The bill book that has more of them is coming out. I think it's supposed to be released this week. I know they're tidying up some things. But those are there to kind of make the bills digestible if you are not familiar with or excel at reading policy and bill language. So the first one is the great news. HB 221 is a student teacher stipend. And so anybody who is in a traditional Utah University program and completing their student teaching in a Utah LEA will receive a stipend. We think it's $6,000. We don't know. The board has to decide this. They can't be earning or be receiving any other state funds. So grow your own scholarships. Scholarships through Department of Workforce Services would disqualify this individual. Anyone who's an intern also cannot receive the stipend because they are an employee of the LEA. So the board is going to work through this issue in May committee, and then it'll go to the full board in June. So we'll see how the board determines to implement that. Oh, we're good. Educator background checks. This was an interesting bill around requiring individuals or LEAs requiring their candidates. Can we just stay with the slides? That will be more helpful for, I think, everyone. Thanks. LEAs can't charge candidates for a background check fee. You can charge them for a fingerprinting fee, but not a background check fee. And it includes non-licensed employees, licensed employees, substitute teachers, volunteers, coaches. So you can't charge the BCI background check fee. You must provide candidates an option to clone their background check. So if somebody maybe they were employed at Granite School District and now they're moving to Davis School District, Davis School District would have to provide candidates the option to clone their background check. And so that means we would have to provide a TCN number to the educators. This is more information for your people who do fingerprinting and background checks, but may be helpful to you as you support educators who are new to your district or charter that are coming from other districts and charters. Okay, SB 173 has a couple of components that are pretty big. It's $100 million, and it has two programs associated. One is called the Effective. Can you go to the next? Yeah, perfect. Excellence in Education and Leadership Supplement Program. This is in collaboration with the Utah State University Center for Schools of the Future. And there's a lot of components to it. It requires LEAs to create a plan for how they want to identify excellence in education, and then would provide a tiered stipend to candidates who meet that requirement. It's an opt-in program, so LEAs are not required to participate in the Excellence in Education Leadership Supplement pilot program, but it is available. The one that's more critical, I think, is the new SHINE program, which is salary supplement for highly needed educators. And this is replacing TSSP starting in 2025. So we'll have one more year of the normal TSSP program, and then starting July of 25, it shifts to SHINE. And SHINE requires LEAs to determine what are your highly needed areas. What are the qualifications that you require to fill that position, and how will you compensate those individuals? It's limited to teachers, and that's bill language. The board is going to address this in May committee and then June full board to figure out some of these details, but LEAs will have a year to establish kind of what they feel is their needed teacher areas, and then submit that to the board. The distribution is also very different than TSSP. TSSP is $4,100 period. per educator, and Shine will take a distribution that is determined by the number of students enrolled in your LEA. And then the district or charter school could figure out how to distribute those funds within their own LEA. Charter schools will get 20% of the pot and districts will get 80% of the pot, and then it's based on student enrollment. So then those are the good ones. And then here we get into the ones that have been a little stickier. 208, there's a couple different provisions in 208. The APPEL programs may not have a requirement for your program that is in conflict with board rule. What does that mean? It means that if you require something for your APPEL candidates that is in excess of board rule, then your program may be found to be not compliant with this provision of the law. We're still working through some of these things and what was intended from the bill sponsor, but we're working through some of those things. The role of teacher leader was expanded to be able to provide feedback on licensure. This isn't that big of a shift for us. We already have your teacher leaders, your mentors, and induction specialists who are already doing this work. So that's not that big of a step. One of the big components of this bill was that the USBE has to develop a strategy to expand or refine teacher preparation. We're required to collaborate with USHE and the RISA directors and people who do hiring, so HR directors, to develop the strategy. And the strategy has to consider, can we go forward? Competency, experiential learning, apprenticeship, degree agnostic pathways. It doesn't say we have to use them, it just says we have to consider them. And so we'll be working to convene a group of stakeholders to work in this area. It's my guess that the work will lean heavily towards establishing a registered apprenticeship program, as we already have received funds for that. The component that is most, I think, impactful to this group is the provision that the board may not require a pedagogical performance assessment as a condition of licensure for teachers. So the bill goes into effect May 1. So can we go to the next slide? So what do we do? And the bill goes into effect before the board will have the ability to discuss this item. So everything that you're going to see and hear in the next few moments related to the PPA requirement is under construction. So it may change based on what the board determines, but there are certain things that we know for sure are not true. So we're going to propose that that a teaching competency evaluation is required, and a PPA would meet that requirement. In addition, we're looking at perhaps having LEA's programs decide what does a teaching competency evaluation look like in your district. But since the law goes into effect May 1st, on May 1st, you may recommend candidates with a PPA that have any score. You may also recommend somebody who has not taken the PPA but has completed a specific microcredential stack of HQI, High Quality Instruction Part 1 and Part 2, and the Diverse Learners microcredential. So that would be starting May 1. If the board approves our proposal, yes, Shonda, if they have a 20 on the PPA, you may recommend on May 1. Okay, May 1. You can't do it June or April 30th, but May 1, yes. Okay. So those are going to be the two pathways that are in effect until the board determines what to do. So starting May 1, they can have a PPA with any score. We're going to take any score until September 1 of next year. And then, or they can have the micro-credential stack. So those two things will meet the requirement for board rule. So it's not necessarily a hesitancy of removing the requirement. The problem is that we have board rule that is in conflict with state law on May 1. And so how the board determines to deal with it is going to be, we don't know. And that is what we don't know. We believe that the micro-credential stack will be in effect for longer than just starting May 1. We're looking at refining those to align them better to the new competencies. But these are the critical pieces. There's 9 of the new competencies that these 3 micro-credentials and a PPA will measure. And then if somebody measures them that way, then you wouldn't have to do a secondary assessment of them, if that makes sense. So it's our intent that the micro-credential stack will be in effect. But again, we don't know what the board is going to do with this, which is why there's a giant yellow sign. So we don't know. But starting May 1, because that's when the law goes into effect, these are the 2 ways that we're going to be compliant with the law while also trying to be as much in alignment with the board rule as we can. These 3 micro-credentials are available. They're available now. And the links to them are in this teaching competency evaluation proposal, so you can get straight to them that way. The teaching competency evaluation is a proposal that we have worked with a variety of stakeholders. We've worked with APPEL directors, we've worked with university programs and HR directors, and there are some programs who, for efficiency and also for accreditation purposes, need to have some sort of an assessment that has a common tool. And in order to support these programs, and also because of the other component of 208 that says APPEL programs can't have anything that's in conflict with board rule, we need to protect programs who, for their purposes and ability to function, need to have an option for this kind of a thing. Okay. Great. Yeah, so Lisa just put a link in that goes directly to the UPERA slides, and all of those links will work. It may have been something coming into Google that caused it to not work. So more information will be coming regarding 208 and the implementation or de-implementation of the PPA. We'll see, but that really is right now we're just waiting to see what the committee and the board determine in the next couple of months. So we'll see. Okay, so the U.S. Department of Labor and Education has granted Utah $1.8 million to develop a teacher apprenticeship. And so we're working on that. We're in the process, hopefully very soon, going to be hiring an educational specialist to help us to develop the teacher apprenticeship. Some of the things that are going to be included in this apprenticeship, and if you can go to the next slide, is that the apprenticeship would pay for education-related expenses, on-the-job learning, so it would pay them to be in schools. It would pay teachers who mentor these apprenticeships and also provide training to LEAs who employ apprentices so that they can understand the apprenticeship model and their responsibilities in supporting apprentices. So this is a newer application of apprenticeships in the world of teaching. And so what does that look like? Oh, this is just our timeline. We're hoping that we're going to get that, keep going. We hope that we'll be able to get that up and running this fall, but we're not sure. So the model of an apprenticeship is that somebody learns and earns. So if you think about like a trades apprentice, they learn the trade of plumbing or of welding while also earning money and working. And so that would be the same in education. So somebody maybe could work as a para-educator for a couple of years while learning the job of being a teacher. And it would, so their duties would be more than just a para-educator. They would start a para-educator and then do some co-teaching and then do some teaching and then complete like a student teaching type experience while being an apprentice and not the teacher of record. So that would be a key point for apprentices. The employment sponsors are LEAs that would employ these apprentices and also guarantee a full-time teaching position once they're professionally licensed. We're going to start with elementary education because that is our only critical shortage area, but we will expand in the years following to special education and secondary education. We're in partnership with the National Center of Grow Your Own to help establish a registered apprenticeship program. We're also going to start working with West Ed to try and learn from other states that have that jumped into the apprenticeship program pool and have found some of the pitfalls, and really we want to focus on ways that we can avoid some of those pitfalls. It is not going to replace Grow Your Own. However, Grow Your Own was not funded this year from the legislature. It was a very lean year in the entire state. And so we did not see any additional funds for Grow Your Own. So this would be something that is separate. Grow Your Own, we are hopeful that it will come back. It was a priority of the board going into last legislative session, and we anticipate the board continuing that request next session. So fingers crossed, hopefully next year Utah has a little more income so that they can spend a few more $1 million creating teachers, because we know that that has been a really powerful lever for your districts. Okay, I think this is, I'm passing this one back to Lisa. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Really appreciate your help with all that. It's a lot of information to digest in a short amount of time. There was a question about something about, and I don't know if this is regarding the apprenticeship program. I'm not sure, Rebecca.
I think this is regarding that teacher competency evaluation. This is, we don't know, Rebecca. This is where we're not sure what the board is going to say. This is what we're going to try and propose to the board. But I don't know, and I could not reliably predict what the board might decide. So what we anticipate proposing is that a local program could determine what they deem their teacher competency evaluation, and that there would be some sort of an option if they said, well, we want to use the PPA, that the PPA wouldn't be the only option available to candidates. But again, that's in the world of, we are not sure what it's going to look like yet.
Thank you. And I will say that until we know what the board wants, it's hard to predict what will happen. I think there was a comment from somebody about, you know, how do I recommend somebody in the fall? We really don't know until the board decides. So we hope to have answers by June at the earliest. So we'll see. One thing we do know, oh wait, there's another message.
Yeah, it's going to be in the April committee meeting. It's in law and licensing. They meet next Friday at 9:15. So you can tune into YouTube to listen to that discussion. And then it'll go to the full board in May. The micro credentials will certainly last until July 1. We think they probably will last longer, but we're not sure. So certainly through July 1, I'll say.
Okay, so thanks for your help and patience on that. We really appreciate it. One thing we do know is that we do have new EPP standards and new competencies that have been approved by the board. And so this is what we're proposing as an implementation timeline. Would you mind, clicking that link? So this is also in draft form because we wanted to get your feedback before we officially implement it. But this is what we're proposing. So the new preparation program standards and the new competencies, the general teacher preparation competencies and the elementary content competencies were approved by the board in January. We also have literacy competencies that have been approved, but we haven't really done an official implementation of those. I think it was just assumed that they be implemented, but we haven't seen any, it's been sporadic and we haven't had official feedback on that. So we are adding those now that we've got all of our elementary content. So between now and May, the end of May, this is what USBE is working on. We have some work groups they're reconvening. They're the ones that actually designed the micro credentials, or not, sorry, the competencies. They designed the competencies, and they're going to be finalizing those competencies. So now that we know that the board's approved them, they're working on what does it look like to be competent? What are some suggested ways to measure those competencies? And then all of that information is going to be used to publish a bunch of resources for you. One of them is that we're working on right now is how the new competencies align to the old competencies. So for those of you that it may help if you've already got your programs that align to the old competencies, that it may be easier to do it that way. There's also been a lot of questions about how does the PPAs measure those competencies. So we've created a crosswalk for that. We're working on what we're calling the field guide to competency, which is where we would have all the information about what the competencies are, what do they look like, what does it look like when candidates are competent, how do you measure competency, what evidence would be sufficient for demonstrating competency. All those kinds of things will be in the field guide. And then we are looking at a process. So in the next year, we're going to be asking all of our programs to align to those new competencies. And there will be a process for approval for that. So we're working on a guidance document that says, how do you submit evidence your program aligns to the new competencies? And then we're also doing, to implement the new program standards, we are incorporating those into our program review process. We talked a little bit about how that will probably include a self-study report. So we'll have a guidance document on how to do a self-study report. And we'll also have a guidance document that's similar to our previous program review is, what to expect during your program review. So we'll modify that. And we anticipate that all programs will move to the new program review process starting next year, but we don't review all programs every year. So it just depends on where in that cycle you are is when you can expect to see that. And then from June to December, we will be creating new micro-credentials that align to the general teacher competencies. We do anticipate keeping the old micro-credentials through 2025 because, well, probably even after that, because we know that candidates will still need them that are, I should probably state, the expectation for the new competencies is that they are for individuals who enroll in your program starting September 1st, 2025. So we know that there will be candidates still enrolled in your program that are meeting the old competencies. So we will keep our old micro-credentials, and we'll also be working with SLIC and SUU. Marie is here I know there's a question about, like, we met with her this week about aligning their courses to the new competencies. Some of your programs work really well with them. You're welcome to reach out with them and start that conversation. We just wanted to try and facilitate that process to help it go smoother. And then we're also going to be holding multiple workshops for you and your teams on the following topics. Let's see if I remember correctly. Okay. Aligning your programs to the new general teacher competencies, elementary literacy competencies, and elementary content competencies, how to complete the EPP self-study report, and what to expect during your program review. Joyland's question is, so in 24-25, there will be a blend. Yeah, and even candidates, so if what we've done in the past is if the candidates want to move to the new competencies, they're welcome to. That would essentially create a new PLP for them because their expectations will be different. But the expectation is that whatever PLP is established, they can continue on until they finish their program. And that will, but by September 1st, 2025 is when we expect new PLPs created will be expected to meet the new competencies. Hopefully that answers that question. And then the programs, so this is part of the program review process. So we'll be asking programs to submit evidence that they align to the new competencies during this next year. That will probably be at least a first draft by June 1st, 2025. That if you don't work in the summer, we do need to get it submitted earlier so that we can get that feedback and get you approved by August 1st of 2025. And all the programs will need to have their programs approved by August 1st, 2025. Because if they don't, they will need to notify their candidates that they will not be able to admit candidates into their program after September 1st, 2025. So that's kind of the rough timeline on that. We are still asking for an annual report, but the annual report will probably just include the enrollment information, no follow-up questions, because we're getting that information through these other reports. And then for select programs that will probably start doing program reviews in January is that new standard process is, well, I realize it's all abstract right now because we haven't got those guidance documents, but the idea is that we would be asking for feedback on how your program aligns to those standards. And we are doing 2 university programs next year, and we'd like to do up to 15 APPEL programs. And right now we're looking for programs who would like to opt in and help us refine that process. So if you would like to be reviewed in this new process next year, feel free to reach out. That would be great. So let me see. What we would love to have is some feedback on this process. What are your thoughts, questions, concerns, so that we can help resolve those before we officially publish this? And some people like to really chat about it. So I think what we could do is we could do like 2 breakout rooms. If you would like to chat about it and maybe provide group feedback, that would be great. Or if you'd rather just provide your own feedback and not chat about it, that would be fine too. So on the slides, we've got, let's do group 1 and group 2. And then if you want to provide feedback on your own, just feel free to grab one of these. They're all the same. So you can just grab whichever one you would like. And then, and maybe I'll let you choose your own breakout rooms this time. That could be really fun. Yes, ma'am.
What people are choosing, I would like to be one of those first reviews. I know that makes me really crazy.
No,
'cause we
that's
don't know
great.
What happened last time, but I just think where my program's so big,
Mhm.
the more reviews and the more eyeballs we see on that, the better.
Yes.
I don't like time between it because it's just too much. And I would like to request a review of, and I don't know if it's a review, but just a review or an audit of the files for this year. Just
Okay.
so we can close out this year and we're never looking back more than a year, just by sheer number.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe in July, and then we can just I don't know if you want to do July or you want to do September 1, whichever date makes the most sense.
Okay.
But I
Yeah.
would like a review at the end of the year of the files. I just don't want them to get snowballed.
Yeah, I understand. Well, thank you for volunteering, and we'll be in touch. We can make arrangements on that.
Okay. And then maybe sometime, I know that in my program, we're going to do a heavy deep dive into the competencies this summer
Mhm,
and start retooling.
mhm.
So I don't know if we need to like set up a time to do just a pre-meet or maybe
Yeah.
there's enough information, just some check-ins throughout that. But we would like to start renewing all of our courses. I know we just got them all approved, but let's do it again.
All right, that sounds great. Why don't you just send me an email and then
Okay.
we could set up a time to chat some more.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Since all you smart people are here, can I ask, so this little thing about PE, health, and fine arts, that's a thing, huh? In a 3-credit class?
Yes.
That's a
because-
norm?
Because yes, and it's called art, music, and movement. And it's a nationwide norm. It covers fine arts and PE and
They call it movement, though.
yeah, it's movement. And it's because the competencies are so much less, it's much smaller. So you're not trying to get all of the fine arts and all of the PE and all of the health into one class. You're doing a tiny
Yeah,
fraction.
no,
'Cause
that
you're-
makes sense.
Yeah, you're just looking at the elementary ones.
All I know is we've been working on these PE health things for the last 2 years, and Terry Davis was very passionate about, she wants them from kindergarten to have these deep learnings,
But
and
that's
competencies.
that's the PE endorsement though, where
Yeah.
you're specialized in PE. This
And
is
that's all
for-
you're doing all
That's
day.
all you're doing all day.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
looking
yeah,
at
yeah.
Just like I'm teaching 4th grade and I might have to do PE.
For a portion of the day. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
how
yeah.
do I make sure that I know what the PE standards are and how can I do that effectively in an elementary school setting?
Okay, that makes sense. Do you know who the elementary fine arts person is at USBE? I know the PE and health folks.
It is, oh my gosh, see her face. What's her name?
Liz Bunker.
Liz Bunker.
Liz Bunker.
Liz Bunker. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll put a link in the chat to those competencies.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Other question, just following on Maria right now, just real quick. I'm covering in for my colleague from Esperanza Elementary, Assistant Principal Yvonne. And I never been in these meetings before, so I'm just kind of taking notes for her. But she asked, she was very interested in knowing the actual legislative change. I don't know if you talked about that during the first of the meeting or if that question makes sense or not, but is there anything that comes to mind about that?
I mean, there were lots of legislative changes because there were 166 bills passed in education.
Okay.
So my guess is she's talking about HB 208, and we did discuss that in some detail earlier in the meeting.
Okay.
Louise, the
Yes.
We have that in the slides. I don't know if you have
Okay.
access to the slides. She hopefully does. But then we're also recording this meeting so that she can
Perfect.
go back. We'll hopefully get it up and available in like a week.
In like a week, maybe this
Yeah.
recording will be available.
Yes,
Okay, okay. I will pass that on. Thank you so much.
sure. Thank you.
Maria, I just put the link in the chat to the elementary competencies.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
And then I guess I just find a general, someone who's got a master's in and endorsed in elementary would be someone qualified to teach all three. That's the tricky part too, is
Yeah.
finding somebody who's got the expertise to teach all three.
Yeah, I would imagine that anybody who is an elementary school teacher would have the expertise to teach this.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. I'll get working on it.
You are amazing and we appreciate you.
Still here. This is the last thing that we have on our agenda for today. So I'm going to give the breakout room just a little bit longer to keep working because it looks like they're still working. But we are done for today. So if you've provided your feedback on one of those documents, you're welcome to leave. If you've got questions, I think we could probably answer a few of those right now. But we are pretty much done. So we appreciate